Cheeseheads. Get on your feet. It's Curd and Long. Hosted by Sparky, Fifer, and Ryan Horvat.
Welcome in to another edition of Curd and Long. Thanks for tuning us in here. See Sparky Fifer in beautiful Milwaukee, Wisconsin. There is Ryan Horvat in lovely Washington, D.C., hanging out there. And the conference championship games are done. The Packers still don't have a defensive coordinator. One former Packer player suggesting Derrick Henry become a Packer next season. We'll get into that as well. And thoughts on some of these hirings around the league, including Horvat's love affair with one offensive coordinator that is moving teams, and a fit that I don't like all that much, to be honest with you. So we'll get into that too a little bit later on in the podcast. First, I want to start off with Horvat. I don't have it down on the YouTube screen here as we stream on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page, but anybody that you really like of the defensive coordinator candidates that are still out there for the Packers at this point that you like to see him get?
Man, I feel like I'm on the boat, the camp here where it's anybody but Joe Barry. Anybody but Joe Barry. Jeez Louise. And it's Monday morning for me. Anybody but Brandon Staley for me. That would be I do not want Brandon Staley. Brandon Staley's supposed to be this defensive genius. He had all the talent in the world with the Chargers, and I know that they had some injuries, but J.C. Jackson regressed, then got traded to New England and went back to being J.C. Jackson. They had a bunch of talent, and the reason that they weren't winning games was the defense. So I don't want him. There's really not necessarily a guy that I want, This is
where I'm at. So there's a lot of talk about position coaches, right? Young guys.
Yeah.
And listen, I'm not going to say they're not going to work. They could be the next Belichick defensively. Who knows, right? I prefer somebody that's called defensive plays before, somebody that's not trying to find the rhythm in a game. And because there is an art to offense and there is an art to defense, I believe, in play calling. And some are better at it than others. So, if we're going to go down the path of giving some young guy a chance, and that's what it sounds like may happen, we're going to give some young guy an opportunity to be defensive coordinator for the very first time. Just be aware that more than likely there'll be some growing pains next season, especially early on as he tries to find his way a little bit on the calls.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I wanted an established guy, but there's not really, many of those guys out there. You know what I mean? Green Bay's not going to bring in a Vic Fangio or one of these older dudes. But that works. Look what Jim Schwartz was able to do, although, man, they didn't look very good in the playoffs. Look what Brian Flores was able to do for Minnesota. I look at these names, and I don't think that guy's out there this offseason, unfortunately. But I do think that you had to move on from Joe Barry. Again, I don't want Brandon Staley. I would love, I don't really have a name, to be honest with you. Do you?
Well, I want Jim Leonard. That's who I've wanted from the
Right, yeah, but we already talked about it. I think I spent the last podcast, for an hour talking about Jim Leonard. That's who I want. But other than him, man, I think everybody's
Minter was another guy I wanted, but Harbaugh's bringing him to the Chargers, so that's off the table. He's not coming. But again, these are guys that maybe didn't call plays in the NFL, but they have called plays at other points of their life in, say, college football, right? So that's why I like that. Leonard apparently hasn't even gotten an interview based on any media reports. Nobody's even has him even involved at this point, which is mind-boggling to me that you wouldn't even talk to him again since you offered him the job the last time. And now he has no job. A consultant to Illinois is really not a job. So from that perspective, you would think you would go back. If you liked him so much before, what changed? Because he doesn't have a job, that changed? I don't know. I don't get it.
I don't understand why he's not getting job interviews in college football though. Everybody I know, that's what we're all talking about is why isn't anybody what is he waiting for, man? Is he waiting?
I don't think he wants to move. He doesn't want to move. Simple. That's why he took the Illinois consulting gig. He can do that from home. He doesn't go down there a couple times, whatever. But
he's in the wrong profession, then, man. This is
I don't think he's got family and kids. I don't think he wants to pick up and move. I think that's a part of the issue. So if he's going to move, everybody in the family is going to have to be on board with. Okay, let's go move to Texas, or okay, let's go move to wherever, Gainesville, Florida, wherever it's going to be. They're all going to have to be on board. I think that could be very well be the holdup. And again, he's made some good money. It's not like he's poor.
I would be happy, to be honest with you, right? So, like, if Green Bay were to go out and hire, like a former head coach that didn't pan out, but a good defensive,
Rivera?
Not him, though. Not Riverboat Ron. No.
I'm just
That's the thing. Like, I'm not trying to. This isn't the best content, the best podcast. There isn't like a guy that I would feel good about. Like, even like we did this the last pod and you brought up like Rex Ryan, and I'm like, oh God, no. You know what I mean? Like, there's not that Brian Flores type candidate that's out there, that like still wants to be a head coach. Like Dan Quinn. That was a great hire for Dallas. I don't want Dan Quinn to become the next head coach of my football team, but he's a great defensive mind. But yeah, I don't know, man, because I don't really love any of these names, or it's just like I don't know enough about them. I'm sure that they could do it.
That's my issue.
You know what I mean?
That's my issue. I don't know a ton about a lot of these guys.
I'm more of an offensive guy, like a play caller guy, like a quarterbacks coach guy. So when it comes to defense, I always listen to other people. I'll listen to like the Brian Baldingers of the world tell me who they think are going to be good. Because, to me, I don't really know.
Yeah, we'll find out how this whole thing plays out and go from there. Again, as long as it's not Joe Barry and not Brandon Staley, good. I'm totally fine with that. But all I ask is if you're going to play a similar style defense to what you've played, which I think that's what LaFleur wants to do. If that's what you want to do, fine. Then draft cornerbacks and safeties that play that type of defense well. Draft for the scheme. Please draft for the scheme. Because you got a bunch of dudes out there that want to play more man-to-man, don't want to play as much zone, getting frustrated playing zone. Then draft dudes that, are successful playing that type of coverage, or you believe will be very successful playing that type of coverage going forward.
Here's the thing, dude. Like Shanahan in San Francisco always knock it out of the park with their defensive coordinator. Same thing with McVay. Those guys always end up getting head coaching gigs. This isn't for no, I don't want Riverboat frickin' Ron or a name. I want Matt LaFleur and the smart football people in that organization, mainly Matt LaFleur, to be like, hey, here's a guy that deserves a shot. I think this guy's going to be the next big thing. You know what I mean? Like, they work with these guys every day. They understand who knows, who's ready to make that leap and who isn't. So I don't really want a flashy name.
Well, Christian Parker is the name.
I would love Jim Leonard. I would love some of these guys from the college game. Or I would maybe like one of these coordinators that I don't really know a whole lot about. Maybe a guy that's coaching DB somewhere or something like that. Or a guy maybe that's already on staff. Maybe you're promoting from within.
Right. This Christian Parker guy, that's 32, I want to say, who's been in Seattle, I want to say, and now they're talking about bringing him back in. He was in the building as like a newbie, like learning on the job type deal before he landed the Seahawks gig to be a DB's coach or whatever it may be. And has rose quickly. Obviously, he's only 32. And now he interviewed, and there were some reports over the weekend that they offered him the job. So we'll see if this goes. Peter Bukowski tweeted this yesterday. Something I've been wondering about with Christian Parker and the Packers. He was a quality control coach in Green Bay with basically this entire defensive staff. How would it play around the building to hire a coach they all just outranked in the organizational depth chart like 5 minutes ago? I don't know. I think that's a fair point. I mean, that would be like saying, somebody starts at the radio station as an intern, comes back 2 years later, and they're the afternoon show host. What? What the hell just happened? Wait a second. Producer's been here like 10 years, part-timer, host, or whatever else. And this guy was an intern 2 years ago, goes, works at another radio station in a different
market. You suck it up. I work with people that show up once every 3 months and make more money than I do. That's called real life, Sparky. You know what I mean?
Right, like this guy's going to be their boss because you're the D coordinator, so you're the boss of all these other coaches on the staff.
That's how it does work. Hey, I would rather. Here's my thing. I would rather. Hey, somebody was an intern, busted their ass, like Eric Spoelstra. Somebody was a video coordinator, worked their ass up, rather than, hey, this guy's here because his dad, got him the job, or he knows somebody, or you know what I mean? Or
no
Jack
doubt.
Collinsworth, nepotism type thing.
Yeah.
So I don't think guys have a problem with that in this league, actually. You know what I mean? I don't think that would be a big thing, unless he went in there.
I'm sorry. I said Seahawks. He's with the Broncos. My bad.
Yeah, it's okay. But unless he went in there and he was like, bossing people around, like, hey, remember when I was the intern and you guys were, bullying me?
Oh, could you imagine?
Yeah, but I don't think it would be like that, man. So I think that's how this league works, though. You know what I mean? I mean,
yeah.
that's kind of how it goes.
Yeah, so we'll have to wait and see how this whole thing plays out. All right, I probably should have made a little thing for that for the YouTube channel. I didn't think we talked that long about the coordinators, but who knows? By the time this podcast comes out, maybe they'll have a coordinator. We can talk about it more on Wednesday. All right, take a quick time. I'll come back. I want to talk about the NFL conference championship games, both sides, AFC and NFC, with Ryan Horvat. Then when we talk about the games, the topic after that will be us talking about what do we learn from a Packer perspective about where the Packers are, in relation to where these four teams are kind of that we're playing on Sunday. But first, we'll talk about the games themselves. That's up next. Curd and Long on your Odyssey app, wherever you download your favorite podcast at, and of course, streaming live on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page. Back after this. Hey, it's Sparky Fifer, 1250 AM, The Fan, beautiful Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Follow me on Twitter at Sparky Radio. You can follow Ryan Horvat on at Ryan Horvat. Of course, BetMGM tonight. Weeknights, all the games are going on. You listen to him, Trista Crick and Nick Ashu on the BetQL Radio Network, or stream it on your Odyssey app. They'll give you in-game betting advice, give you betting advice on the West Coast games, all that fun stuff. And actually, tonight, Monday, as we record this, Doc Rivers' first game with the Milwaukee Bucks tonight in Denver for that one, Bucks and Nuggets. So that should be a fun one. We'll have our Green and Growing podcast if you're listening to this on Monday. Post-game podcast immediately following that one coming up tonight. All right, let's talk about the NFL Conference Championship games. Let's, I guess, start off in the AFC where the great Lamar Jackson loses again, this time to the Kansas City Chiefs. The great Mike Macdonald, defensive coordinator, didn't look so great in the first half of that game as the Chiefs pretty much had their way a little bit. Now, the second half, he shut down the Chiefs. So props to him there. Fine. I'm down with that. Lamar Jackson, on the other hand, he thought it was a boneheaded play, into the end zone fourth quarter, and he was pissed off about that. But even if you just put that aside, he's got to be better than just in general. You're that MVP type candidate that everybody said, oh, you're the MVP. You're the MVP. You've got this outstanding defense that's supposed to be it. Now, again, I'm with you. They didn't do it in the first half, but you're the MVP guy. You got to go be better than what he was, man. You and I went back and forth about Lamar Jackson in the playoffs, and he looked good against the Texans. And I said, okay, I was wrong. He was good. And then you come back in this game, and I don't know. I don't think he regressed or whatever you want to say it is, but you just didn't get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, no, he wasn't very good yesterday. He was pretty bad yesterday. But also, Zay Flowers can't fumble. That's a different game if he doesn't fumble the ball, reaching out to try to get it into the end zone. So too many penalties, too many boneheaded mistakes on both sides of the ball. My takeaway was, Lamar wasn't good, but they could have won that game. They didn't have the right game plan going into that game. You don't have Lamar dropping back, and running a bunch of empty sets and stuff. If you want to play Kansas City, if you want to beat Kansas City, you run power against them. They really struggled to defend heavy sets, and you had Mark Andrews back, so he should have been on the field with Isaiah Likely, and it should have been Lamar using his legs the entire game. Brock Purdy had more rushing yards than Lamar did yesterday. That was the one area where I thought that they were going to have the advantage over Kansas City. Kansas City can't defend runs, but they especially can't defend runs that are off tackle. And Lamar Jackson this season off tackle averages almost 6 yards per carry, 5.9, which was fourth in the National Football League. He was first in design quarterback runs and quarterback scrambles, which is the most efficient play in all of football. And they're dropping him back, asking him to be Mahomes out there. And that's not really Lamar's game. You know what I mean? He's improved as a passer, but I thought Todd Monken was terrible yesterday. Mike Macdonald, like you said, he was much better in the second half. I just think that says everything about Andy Reid and Mahomes, dude.
And Kelsey
put out this.
Kelsey played well.
Yeah. Yep. And I put this video out on. I didn't do it, but BetQL did on Instagram, and it's got 150K views and 4,000 likes, and there was also some haters on it. And I was like, I talked myself into Mahomes is going to win this game, and he's going to go to the Super Bowl, and he's going to win the Super Bowl because he's the greatest of all time. And these people were all coming at me. Some people were like, solid take. Some people were like, oh, greatest of all time, Brady, Montana. And I'm like, I didn't say the most decorated, the most accomplished of all time, but Pat Mahomes is the greatest quarterback ever to play this game, in my opinion. He has more playoff wins before age 30 than Brady did. Are you telling me Joe Montana? And I was around for the end, but you're telling me Joe Montana could roll to his left and throw a 60-yard dart to his right? Absolutely not. Tom Brady himself.
Montana and Brady both, neither one of those two guys had big arms.
And they would both sit down and tell you, Mahomes, Pat's way more talented than we ever were. Brady would probably tell you, I was, a bigger competitor. I don't even know if you would
The
do
bigger
that.
cheater. Mahomes didn't cheat that I know of yet, so that's also puts him ahead of Brady.
Mahomes is the best quarterback to ever play the game, and so that's what happened yesterday in that game. He's awesome. Kelsey's awesome. Their connection. I mean, Kelsey just broke the Jerry Rice records. They broke the Brady Gronkowski connection records, and who knows? He probably has another year or two left in him, even if he does lose a step, just because for whatever reason, defenses, even if you play zone, or if you play man against them, he always finds a way to get open. And Mahomes is awesome. So, yeah, that was a stinker from Lamar yesterday, but I thought Todd Monken was much worse. I thought he was terrible calling plays yesterday.
I was listening to Bill Ryder on CBS Sports Radio that you can hear weekdays on 12:50 a.m. The Fan from 9 to 11. He made a great point. And he said, throughout the course of this year, and especially in the beginning of the year, everybody was like, well, this is your year. If you're going to do something in the AFC, this is your year because Mahomes doesn't have any wide receivers. All he's got is Kelsey. So if you're going to do something, this is your year. And here they are. And as Ryder pointed out, he goes, they're going to get him a receiver in the offseason. There's no way they don't come out of the offseason without getting him more help than what he has at wide receiver because he doesn't have much. Plus, they were banged up. Tony didn't play in that game either. MVS obviously now is going to get another Super Bowl ring out of this, which is insane. But they're actually probably going to be better going forward than anything else after this year because Mahomes is going to have more weapons, I would think. This was the year for people to strike and stop Kansas City from getting there, and they couldn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's because of their defense. I mean, that's the thing, man. Lamar was terrible against the blitz yesterday, and Spags just sent everybody. He just didn't flinch.
Why?
They blitz at the 7th highest rate, and Lamar was terrible against the blitz.
Why hasn't he had a head coaching interview? I know he's had his shot. I get it. He's with the Giants or whatever, but I'm surprised that nobody has called on Spagnuolo for a head coaching vacancy. He hasn't had a single interview request that I know of.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe he's just comfortable and happy doing what he's doing. I'll run the defense. Andy runs the offense, and we'll win Super Bowls every year with Pat. What they need to do is get Matt Nagy the F out of there because he stinks,
he's
man.
Awful.
And if you notice, the last couple of weeks, it's been more Mahomes in control at the line of scrimmage and less Matt Nagy influence, I think, in the play calling, which has helped them out a lot. Yeah, Chiefs, man, I knew it was coming. All season long, they just have it's Pacheco or it's Kelsey one week or it's Rashee Rice. It's MVS finally making a play, or Richie James. They don't have the most talented team. I agree with what you said. Yeah, next year they're probably even better. Maybe they go out and get a T. Higgins or something like that. Probably not because
could you imagine that?
I think Cincy's gonna give him the franchise tag, but who knows? They could go out and get somebody.
You imagine T. Higgins in Kansas City? Oh, my God. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Goodbye. And then you got to face Burrow in the playoffs with Higgins and Mahomes. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my. That would be brutal. All right, let's talk about the NFC side of things. So let me first start by saying this. The Niners, after the Packer game, I was like, I don't want to hear this crap about the Niners anymore. That's it. They should have lost. They didn't. Fine. They get credit. No big deal. Then I'm listening, and I don't know who the heck it was, but somebody on BetQL, I tweeted it out. Somebody on BetQL over the weekend compared the Niners to the Michael Jordan Bulls. I about let through the radio to try and pull somebody out. I don't know who it was. I have no idea. I never caught who it was. And I tweeted it out. I was like, okay, that's it. Now somebody on the national radio, I didn't say it was BetQL, somebody on national radio just said, compared the Jordan Bulls to the Niners. I was like, I'm losing my mind. You people are absolutely nuts on your Niner takes. So now here comes the Lions game. And the Lions did the Lions. But my God, for a half of football, they were the much, much better team. This is 2 games in a row now where the Niners have found themselves not looking as good as the other team they were playing. And 2 games in a row, they bailed themselves out at the end. Now, this was far more impressive than the Packer game. By far. The Lions, like the Packers, though similarly, shot themselves in the foot. Campbell going forward on multiple 4th downs that didn't work. Drop passes, fumble, all of that stuff obviously working against them. And Brock Purdy running around like Steve Young also was, to me, was unexpected. The first time he broke off, I was like, my God, it's Brock Purdy. What is going on? And then he did a couple more times. I was like, it's over. If he's going to be running around free and nilly, ain't nobody going to touch him. They're in a lot of trouble. And in the second half, the Niners dominated, and Dan Campbell he didn't cost him by himself, but he definitely didn't help things.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's the thing. You know what you're going to get with Dan Campbell. And if that works, he's a genius. If it fails, he's, of course, not a genius. But that wasn't the only thing. Like, Dan Campbell last night, a little bit too aggressive. You had that game right in front of you. You blow.
He's been that way all year. To be fair, Campbell's been that aggressive all year in the regular season, right?
See, here's what would worry me. Yeah. I mean, that's what Dan Campbell does, and it's worked for him. But here's the thing, like with Detroit, man, I think they're going to regress because they're going to lose Ben Johnson. He's going to take the Commander's job, turn that thing around. And then it's Dan Campbell, Jared Goff, who's taking over play calling. That offense is going to look much different. Like Ben Johnson has done wonders, obviously, with Jared Goff. But I feel better about being a Packer fan. Even they have a bunch of talent, man. Sam Laporta is the real deal at tight end, obviously. Gibbs is awesome. They still have Montgomery and St. Brown. Jared Goff had a really good year. But when you lose a play caller like Ben Johnson, man, I think they're going to regress on that side of the ball. The defense is good against the run, and they could get pressure. Hutchinson's awesome, but that pass defense isn't very good. Feel better about Green Bay going into next year. And who knows, might even feel better about Chicago going into next year, to be honest with you. We'll see what they're able to do this offseason, but they're probably going to take Caleb Williams. Yeah, I think the Lions will go back to being the Lions, man. And you had everything right in front of you. You had a 17-point lead. You were going to the Super Bowl, and you blow it. And it was crazy because they blew that lead, and it's 8 minutes later, and we got a tie game. And then San Francisco's up 3, and then San Francisco's up 10. And I didn't even think that the Lions deserved the cover for the way that Dan Campbell coached last night. So he cost them in the long run. They still have a bunch of talent, but losing Ben Johnson is going to be a huge loss, dude.
I have the answer to who replaces Ben Johnson because I looked at my phone real quick to see their coaching staff, and I remembered this dude actually has an interview this week, I want to say. Antoine Randall, their wide receivers coach, that's going to be your next offensive coordinator. Got a ton of coaching experience. He's a player like your boy Campbell. He's got an interview this week somewhere else, I think, for an offensive coordinator or a head coaching job somewhere. I don't remember where it was, but I believe that's his first interview this cycle for promotion. So if Johnson takes a commander's job, which you assume is going to happen, as does everybody in DC. So if he takes that job, then I would think that they'll just promote Antoine Randall, run the same offense. But as we've said before, the art of calling plays is an art form, right? It's not anything. One other thing, and we're not talking about this, but the Pittsburgh Steelers are interviewing Arthur Smith for their offensive coordinator job. If I was the Pittsburgh Steelers, I would rather talk to Antoine Randall, my former guy, about coming and being the offensive coordinator than going down the path of Arthur Smith after watching that Falcons offense last year. That's just me.
But really quick to defend Arthur Smith, which I don't want to do. Trust me, that team cost me a ton of money this year. But I think it's easier for him to focus on the play calling duties, focus on game planning for that, when he's also not the head coach of the football team. So I wouldn't hate that hire, especially if Matt Canada has been calling plays for the last couple seasons. But
you don't have a quarterback.
But like Antoine Randall, and shout out Antoine Randall because he grew up like 20 minutes from me. But see, that's the thing, man. Like you could run the same offense, but you saw Ben Johnson last night in his bag. I mean, the jet sweep to Jamison Williams that goes for 6 to give him the lead right off the bat. He set that up, man. He was so good on those first 2-3 scripted drives, and that was all Ben Johnson. And so I'm not saying like the Lions can't be a playoff team, but I don't think they're a game away from the Super Bowl next year with that defense. And that's like, even on the defensive side of the ball, I didn't understand why Aaron Glenn was getting interviews. That defense wasn't even very good other than like Hutchinson and, they're pretty good against the run, but they can't stop the pass. So you get another player, ex-player in there on that coaching staff, and I think that could be like an 8-9 win team, man.
Well, it'll be interesting, and that's what I want to talk about next. What did Packer fans take away from the conference championship games? I'll tell you that I took away this team might be in a damn Super Bowl next year. That's what I took away from it. They're going to get a new defensive coordinator. They're going to get a draft. Cross your fingers that Goody has another good draft like he has had the last 2 years. You add some more talent to this thing. This could be a team that could be in the Super Bowl next year in Jordan Love's second year as a starter, because there's not much there when you look around the NFC to go, oh, yeah, they can't beat them. Oh, yeah, they can't beat them. We said that about the Cowboys. They beat them. We said that about the Niners. They should have beat them in San Francisco. And now you're going to get a new defense that has to be better than what we had with Joe Barry. Yeah. This offense has had a year to figure itself out. So you're not going to have this long lull in the middle of the season like they had this last year. I mean, what? I haven't looked at the schedule as far as teams they play necessarily, but I think going into next year, you're thinking, what, 11, 12 wins? You're going to be talking about a division title and home field at least one or two games next year, I would think, with this Packers team. So watching that whole thing with the Niners and the Lions, to me, I'm just like, oh, they're good. Like, they are ready to roll next year.
Yeah, here on Monday, January 29th at 11:51 a.m., Eastern time zone, I am ready to make my prediction for next year's conference championship games. In the AFC, it'll be Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs taking on Joe Burrow and the Bengals.
Ooh.
And then in the NFC, it'll be the Los Angeles Rams with a revamped defense. Stafford stays healthy. Puka and Cooper Kupp in a bounce back year, taking on the Green Bay Packers. Sean McVay versus Matt LaFleur. Those are the two teams in the NFC I feel best about going into next year. Niners, they're going to have the Super Bowl hangover. Either they win it finally and get that monkey off their back, they're 2.5-point favorites, or they lose to Mahomes and they lose some of those guys, right? Whereas with Green Bay, now you have a new defensive coordinator coming in. We don't know who it's going to be, but you have a first-round pick. You have the second-round pick that should have been a first-round pick if Aaron Rodgers was able to play 60% of the games. And if you're able to move on from David Bakhtiari, you're probably going to get a decent return. If they decide to move on from Jair, which I don't think that they should, you're going to get a decent return. Got to fix up the secondary. Need way better safety play, but you have to feel great about that offense, mainly because of the offensive line, even without David Bakhtiari, number 2 in pass protection. You probably bring back Aaron Jones. I don't really want to pay a guy like Derrick Henry at the end of his career. I would rather draft one of these awesome running backs. I would rather go out there and you don't have to spend money on the wide receiver position, but maybe get a vet. I don't know. I feel really good about Green Bay going into the next season. And yeah, that was my biggest takeaway from the conference championship games in the NFC is I'm sitting there, I'm watching San Francisco down 17. I'm watching Brock Purdy and I'm like, this isn't a perfect team. And you're watching the Lions and you're like, this is a team that if Green Bay would have played Detroit again,
they would have won.
I think Green Bay would have won again, man. Like Aaron Glenn, if you go back and you watch that second matchup, they had no answers for Green Bay on the offensive side of the ball. They tried to play man, and Jordan Love picked them apart.
I think Matt LaFleur outcoaches Aaron Glenn every time they play him.
Yeah, so I feel good about Green Bay going into next year. Green Bay and the Los Angeles Rams, if they could stay healthy, that's always the big thing with them. Those are the two teams I like the most in the NFC going into next season. Maybe Atlanta gets a quarterback, but I'm good.
Kirk Cousins would do a world of good for that team if they got Kirk Cousins. Then you could talk about that being a playoff team and a team to deal with. He has Ryan Horvat. Follow him on Twitter at Ryan Horvat. Follow me at Sparky Radio. Take a quick time out. Come back. I want to talk about what he brought up quickly there with Derrick Henry, because Kurt Benkert, the former Packers backup quarterback who is more popular on social media than he was when he was a player. We'll talk about his take, because he always has Packer takes on Twitter. He's a good follow. I follow him. I enjoy his stuff that he puts out there. We'll talk about his take on what he thinks the Packers could do to really help things out for their season next year and going forward. Up next here on Curd and Long. Download on your Odyssey app, or if you download your favorite podcast app, check us out on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page as well. Hey, it's Sparky Fifer, 1250 a.m. The Fan. He has Ryan Horvat over there at BetMGM tonight, part of the BetQL radio network. And, of course, if you go over to 1250amthefan.com, check out the interviews I do each week. Last week, I had a chance to talk to Kurt Hogue of the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, Brewers beat writer. Talked about the Rhys Hoskins signing, amongst other things from the Brewers this offseason. So you can check that one out. You can also check out my interview with Ryan Wood of the Green Bay Press-Gazette. That was a lot of fun, too, talking about Joe Barry being fired. And then, of course, Jim Owczarski from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, Bucs beat writer, talking about the way that this all played out with Doc Rivers becoming head coach of the Bucs and how pissed off I was about that whole thing playing out. All right, let's talk some more Packer football. The Kurt Benkert quote tweeted a quote yesterday, I think it was. It says, Derrick Henry wouldn't need to kill his body in Green Bay and would be the ultimate thunder to Aaron Joe's lightning. Henry, who just turned 30, is entering his free agency year. No indication that he will be back with Tennessee at this point. He's pretty much already said goodbye to everybody. So he's going somewhere. A 30-year-old quarterback, I don't think Ryan Horvat is going to get paid a ton of money, even if it is Derrick Henry, especially with the wear and tear on his body that he already has. So I think if Derrick Henry is expecting a huge payday, I don't think it's going to happen. If Derrick Henry is chasing a ring, hey, man, I think Green Bay could have a nice little sales job here where you don't got to be the guy, and we need to rest Aaron Jones a little bit too. You both can split carries, get about 15 carries each a game, and go to it. That would be a nightmare for opposing defenses if Derrick Henry and Aaron Jones are lined up side by side in the backfield behind Jordan Love to go along with the double tight ends and everything else the Packers have going on. Goodness gracious. Goodness gracious. Woo!
2 old-ass running backs. I'm not spending that amount of money on running. That's not
age discrimination. That's what you're doing right now.
This is not 1993. I will not even entertain this. No, Derrick Henry. If anybody wants to place a wager, Derrick Henry will not be a Green Bay Packer.
I agree.
In what world? In what world are you people still living in where Derrick Henry is going to come ring chase in Green Bay, Wisconsin as well? We did this with Odell Beckham Jr., right? We did this with Tony Gonzalez.
He was with LaFleur in Tennessee, remember? Remember, they were together. They have a relationship. That relationship is there. It's not just Green Bay. He knows Matt. They have a relationship. So there is a little bit of a tie-in. I agree with you. He's not coming to Green Bay.
Marshawn Lynch played with Aaron Rodgers at Cal. They had a relationship.
Yeah, that should have happened.
All of these things should happen. They're never going to happen with the Green Bay Packers, damn it. If I'm being a hater right now just because I don't even like to think of these things. I think Derrick Henry might have a couple good years. If it happened, I'd be excited. I'd be like, hell yeah. But I don't even get excited when I see these things anymore. The last time I got excited was when I saw Odell. I'll never forget the report. Odell Beckham Jr. not only wants to come to Green Bay, he wants to play this Sunday against the Rams. Yeah, he never came to Green Bay. Instead, he went to the Rams and played against us. So, yeah, I don't think it happens, man. I would rather just draft one of these guys like the next Derrick Henry, a power back, get Blake Corum. I would rather draft Blake Corum in the 2nd round or 3rd round than pay Derrick Henry. And he'll be cheaper and he'll be better.
I'm just not a big Blake Corum guy. I don't know. Man, we'll see. I'm not.
I almost lost my computer over that one. Why not?
I've watched Michigan. He doesn't do much for me.
Hold on. No, that's fair. He's not very explosive, but he led the country in touchdowns.
I know.
He's what you want AJ Dillon to be.
Right.
So I think he would be.
Aaron Jones is still your one, though.
Yeah, he would be your perfect complement. Yeah.
Yep.
And maybe we don't need a 2 because what happened down the stretch is they didn't have a 2. So by default, they had to make Aaron Jones the 1 for the first time in his career. And he was the best back in the league.
Yep.
Like the Lions, if they won that game yesterday, should have been calling Matt LaFleur in Green Bay and being like, hey, we owe half of this to you guys because you gave us the game plan. Like, oh man, we could really run the ball against San Francisco. I didn't understand why teams weren't doing that all year. They're 26th in success rate. I think the problem is that's a defense kind of like Green Bay's that's built to have the lead. That's why they're super aggressive too, like LaFleur was in the second half of the season. They want ball first. They want to score. They want to go up 14-0 and put the pressure on you to throw the ball, and then they tee off with that pass rush. Thing is, that pass rush hasn't been very good. Nick Bosa has been on a milk carton, and Chase Young. Yep. Chase Young is a huge bust.
Yep. Montez Sweat, not a bust. Chase Young is a bust. Between the 2 guys that got traded from Washington, one played like a stud and got paid, and the other one, not so much. He is Ryan Horvat. Follow him on Twitter at Ryan Horvat. You can follow me at Sparky Radio. Coming up on Wednesday, I'm going to go over some of the free agents that the Packers have to make decisions on and kind of pick Ryan Horvat's brain as far as who he wants back, who he doesn't want back. And hopefully by Wednesday, we'll have a new defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers to talk about. That would be fun too. Enjoy the rest of your day. Don't forget, download us on the Odyssey app, wherever you download your favorite podcast at. And of course, check us out on YouTube, on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page. Have a good one. Toodles.